This video I'm going to go over the functions of the annotation tools up here on your ribbon. So let's start with dimensions. So this dimension tool is pretty smart. Well, depending on what you click on, it'll figure out what you need typically. So for example, if it's a circular part, so for circles, what you're going to do is just click on the edge of the circle. Now be careful you don't click on one of the O snaps, like click on the quadrant or center or something. But if you click somewhere on here, you'll see it'll automatically determine it's a complete circle. It'll create a leader line with a diameter symbol. Remember, we always pull that out away from the part a little ways. And then you just have to locate it. Remember, those leader lines should always be on an angle. If you have to repeat a dimension, you can just hit, if you want to continue dimensioning, I should say, if you hit spacebar, you can go on and there we go. Sometimes you may have to zoom in or zoom out. Let's see, so let me put a dimension on that. Now in this case, because I have 3 holes that are the same, you don't want to dimension all of those. Imagine if you had a plate that had 50 holes on it that are all the same size. You're not going to dimension each one. So you can easily put a note on there to indicate that there's multiple features. And the way you do that is by putting a number and then an X in front of the dimension. It needs to go in front of the dimension, not after. Sometimes you'll see it done after. It's really not correct. The way you do that is by go ahead and put one dimension on there. Then if you double click on the dimension, see how it turns purple, and you notice if you look close you'll see that there's your cursor, and then you can just type in whatever you want to type. That should be a capital X, and you want to put a space, and then to complete that, don't hit enter. That'll put you to another line. You have to go up here and say close the text editor. Now I made a mistake because there's 3 of them, so double click again, put your cursor there. You can move your cursor around with your arrow keys, and that should be a 3x, and close the text editor, and so forth. So that's how that works. So, if you have a radius dimension, or if you have a complete circle, it should always be called out as a diameter. If you have a partial circle, like these corners are filleted, those should be called out as radius dimensions. And the software, again, it'll know what you're doing. But sometimes it can't tell, it can't grab onto that radius, so you just have to zoom in. And if you keep your cursor there and you keep zooming in, eventually you'll see where that, see how the arrowhead popped up when I got close enough. There we go, and then you click it and zoom out, and then you can locate it. Now, we'll put this kind of crazy. I don't like that too much, but if that's the way it works out, that's fine. Usually I try to avoid having that extra arc thing on there, but it's a balancing act to make that work. It's okay the other way. I prefer it to be like that. In this case, I have 2 fillets that are the same radius, so I'll do a 2x space for that. For notice when you dimension a circle, it'll put a center mark on there. You should always have a center mark at the center of each circle. If you need to add center marks, it's kind of hidden in there. You have to actually leave the Home tab for once and go up here to the Annotate tab. And right over here is center mark. If you click on that and then you click on the circles, it'll put center marks if you need them. Now it looks a little bit different, so if you want, you can always, to make them all look the same, you can do that. That's fine as well. So I already did that one. So then go back to the Home tab. That's where most of our stuff is. For linear dimensions, let me delete. I usually don't do these radial dimensions first. I'm going to delete those, or at least, yeah, let's just delete those. It's easy to put back on. Let's put our linear dimension. Now, sometimes if you have an issue where this won't cooperate, you can always flip over here. If you see this little arrow next to there, and then you can force a particular kind of dimension. You can force it to look for a radius or an angle. Angles are particularly challenging sometimes. For an angular dimension, you need to click on 2 lines that will represent the references for the angle. So for example, I need to call out this angle here. I can actually click on that center line there, or center mark there, and you can see, now I have to find a good place to put this. Remember, you cannot dimension on the part. You can have the arrowheads. Now there's lots of options here. I think you can move around and see what looks best. I think the best option is actually right there. It's really out of the way, and it's a good way to present that. Let's see, so linear dimensions, then we want to go, make sure your ortho is on too, that'll help. And so forth, so you'll just, oops, let me hit escape for a second. Now that's a partial, it's not a full circle, so it's going to call out as a radius. Again, that one, zoom in until you can, oops, I had it there. There we go, then click it, zoom out. Forget the fight, wish I hadn't have erased that now. And what else do we need? We need this. And that one. Remember, they should always be on angles. You have a lot of freedom with these, with leader lines within, within reason. Remember, don't go through your other dimensions though with a leader line. Try to make it nice and clean. Oops, do that again, 3x. I'll get it, there we go. And I'm looking for what I'm missing. Oh, I need another dimension there. So this linear dimension, let's see, let's go from there. Make sure ortho is turned off for this one. Now see the situation I've got myself into here. I'm gonna have to make some changes. So this is challenging. It's gonna happen. You're gonna get complicated parts. I think my best way out of this is put that one there. I'll delete, oops, escape. Delete that one. And I'll put this dimension down here. Oops, turn my ortho back on. There we go. So I think I have all my dimensions on there. So that's how you want to use those dimension tools. Again, you can force the dimension if need be. Typically just use this tool right here. To put text on your drawing, click on that big A right there and you're going to draw a window. Now if we're going to make a title block, that sort of title block on your paper, that's going to be lower right hand corner. So let's just pick a space over here and make a text box. So click one point, move your mouse down and to the right, click another point, and this is going to be where your text goes. Oops. And then if you hit enter, it'll just keep trying to give you new lines of text. That's not what we want. We want to finish, so go up and close the text editor. And if you need to move that, you can always use the move. You can always, if you click on it and just click on that box, you can move it around to arrange it. Remember, if you need to make a change to your number of decimals, for example, which this looks appropriate, I think, for this part, you're going to go up here, click on Annotation, Dimension Styles, Modify, and then you'll go to Primary Units and adjust your precision right there. Right, for right now, that's all we really need to do using that Dimension Styles. Close that. Okay, so those are your annotation tools.